Welcome to Screen Quest, a podcast where a fellowship of film lovers and armchair movie experts plays film roulette. I am one of your hosts, Chris Waterman from Jacksonville, Florida, joined as always by Will Rotondi from Greenville, South Carolina.
Hey, how's it going?
Of course, we also have the lovely May Finch, also from Jacksonville, Florida.
Hey.
How's everybody doing? Having a good week?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's been good.
Trying to keep
Catching
cool
up
in
on
the
school.
heat.
I know. I'm
Oh,
so ready
man.
for fall, man. Marianne posted this meme that was like, close your eyes and imagine like drinking cider and cool breezes and watching horror movies. And I was like, man, this is speaking to me so hard right now.
I used to live in the Mid-Atlantic, and I don't miss it that often, but every July I miss it a lot. Just even a little bit further north, it feels so much nicer.
It does. It really does. Just in the evening, especially. Like I feel like you get that reprieve where you can sit outside, like on the porch, and it's pleasant weather, even if it's a little like warm during the day. Not so much here in the South. It is oppressive pretty much 24 hours a day. It's like it's just a scale of oppressive, like highly oppressive to like moderately depressive, or not depressive, oppressive, but maybe depressive as well.
Well, because yeah, we also like I don't know if you get these where you are, Will, but we often get like daily bad thunderstorms in Florida during the summers. And last week I had one that knocked out my power for a good 12 hours. And if you've ever tried to sleep without AC, it is basically impossible.
Oh, it's the worst.
Oh no. And in Florida. Oh man.
So that adds a little bit extra to the roughness.
Yeah, for real. I mean, it does get pretty bad up here too with the humidity, but I don't think we have anything on Florida when it comes to just that like persistent, ever-present, just thick wall that you hit when you go outside. Like, does it feel like if you went for a run, would it feel like just drinking air down there? Is that where we're
okay. I can't do it. Even in the evenings, like I can't.
You gotta wait till the sun goes down, or first thing in the morning is best if the sun has not come up yet. But that is hard to do. It is hard to beat that bitch out of bed.
Yeah, for those of us that are nocturnal, especially. Yeah. Well, nice. Very cool. On today's episode, we will be doing our second, I believe, bullet time, discussing a scene from The Gift. And of course, as always, we'll also be drawing a side quest. But first, let's not really wish a happy birthday, so to speak, but let's look back at this day. So on the day that we're recording, July 17th, in 1955, Disneyland televised its grand opening in Anaheim, California. So off mic, I was telling you guys a little bit about this, but just to kind of summarize, like it's a very famous disaster nowadays. So the asphalt that they had poured for people to walk around on was still soft because were down to the wire on construction. A lot of issues I know with some of the unions and things, and a lot of people got stuck in the asphalt as they rushed to enter the park. I'll see if I can find a clip and try to put it in here. Some of the craziness. They also had to choose between working toilets and drinking water, and elected for toilets, and instead had to pass out cups of water to the guests throughout the day. Just famously an example of something that really could have sunk. I know that Walt Disney was perpetually on the brink of being broke, and it was not a great first impression for people, but of course the rest is history, and they seem to be doing all right these days. But yeah, I've never actually been to Disneyland. I've only been to Disney World. Have either of you been to Disneyland out in California?
No, but why would you? Disney World is the superior one. So why even mess with Disneyland?
It is. I mean, genuinely so much larger. If you've ever seen photos or talked to anyone, the size difference is apparently just stark. I think you could fit all of Disneyland in the Magic Kingdom parking lot, I think is a statistic that I heard one time. So to give you an idea of the size difference.
Wow.
Yeah, the first I heard about this disastrous day was actually like it was referenced in Jurassic Park, right? They kind of like have a little throwaway line, and Ian Malcolm and his Ian Malcolm ways is like, well, when the Pirates of the Caribbean breaks down, the pirates don't eat the tourists. But it's actually quite fascinating. I'm sure I like it's just the tip of the iceberg of shit that went wrong. But to go back and kind of like read through like some of the accounts, and again, I really hope I can find some news footage. Maybe they were kind and like to shot the other direction. I'm sure there's got to be photos or something out there. Wow. So I guess happy birthday to Disneyland. Sorry you had such a rough start.
Rough
But
birth right there.
yeah.
But look how far you've come. Look how far you've made it.
Yeah, come a long way. Like I said, that Walt Disney Company, no, I don't think they're having many financial problems these days. So all right. Let's go ahead and draw us a side quest. Let's see what we get here. And it is a guilty pleasure. So as a reminder for have we drawn one of these before?
Yes.
I feel like we had one, but
yes,
as a reminder. Go ahead, sorry.
I was just gonna say yes, and I got to talk about one of my favorite Christmas films, which is the Netflix Christmas Prince.
Oh
that's
yeah.
Yeah.
I do remember that.
I put some clips of that in that episode. It was awesome to watch some of the advertisements for that. So this is discuss a film that you know objectively is bad, but you love it anyway. Will, since it's kind of it's your nomination, I'll give you first crack at this if you want it. If not, I'm sure I could dig up something.
Oh hell yeah, I can totally throw one out there right now. Dune from 1984, David Lynch's Dune, which I will say with a caveat, I actually think is better than people like to make fun of it for.
I agree.
But I think that's something that has gotten better with age. So, because I remember when I first watched that movie, I still criticize it. Like it's still like a running joke with one of my best friends about it. When we'll talk about it, we'll throw out quotes from it, and it's very memeable now. But just generally, when it came out, it was so weird, and just I don't know, like the costumes were strange, and some of the decisions to adapt the film from the book were weird, but there was so much about it that was just sort of fun. Like I felt like for trying to condense such a long story, it was actually pretty good, that they crammed as much as they did into it. And that, I mean, at the end of the day, watching Patrick Stewart like slug like a giant like space gun over his arm in one hand and hold a pug in another and shout "for the Duke" and run into battle. I mean, I don't know. You can't get much more kick-ass than that, right? So, I mean, there's that. Special effects are actually not too bad considering. But man, from what I hear, like wasn't David Lynch like in line to do Return of the Jedi at one point? So just imagine how trippy that movie would have been if that was the case.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that. I know he's like disowned like his vision of Dune. He like just famously like hates it. I mean, listen, you got a soundtrack by Toto, all right?
Oh
like,
my god, right? It was amazing.
Of Africa fame, of course. Sting is the villain, like Sting of the Police is the villain. You got Patrick Stewart. Kyle MacLachlan is Paul Atreides. Like, come on. One of the most amazing like people. I mean, he's just so fucking funny. But yeah, I think like my biggest gripe with that movie is like some of like the like it's very expositional, like with the voiceover, and they try to do a lot to like bring you up to speed very quickly by like telling you and not necessarily like showing you. Whereas like of course like the new adaptation's like really successful because it takes time to breathe and it's a lot of context and you have to kind of pick up things. But I agree with you, man. I think that movie is quite enjoyable. I watch it every couple of years or so, just for laughs. There's a kind of an extended edition of it that's like a 45 minutes longer or so. That's I think arguably like even better because like you get more of like what that was. But May, if you've not seen this, like you owe it to yourself to experience this gem.
I've seen clips, so I know about the costuming, and that's definitely the thing that gets made fun of, at least in my circle.
Yeah.
Casting is phenomenal, obviously, and I didn't even realize Toto did the music. It's high on my watch list. I've only seen clips, but yeah, I love Lynch. I love Dune. This just seems like an unholy child.
It
is a
so
cult
close
classic.
to being like a class. You know what I mean? Like genuinely a
Yeah.
classic. Like it gets right there. It's just something about it doesn't come together, and it's really unfortunate. I think the still suits actually look pretty good. Like I think those designs were fine, but it's some of the other stuff that's a little like.
At least
Man,
it's not
but-
Troll 2.
Oh, also a classic.
But no, I love that pick, man. That's good. I watched it in preparation of the one that came out last year. Was it last year, 2021. Yep. Yeah. I'm very excited about the casting of the new one too, by the way. But sorry to digress.
Yeah. No, you're great. I was just gonna say, and actually, as a nice little tip of the hat over to the other podcast that you were associated with, that you guys did like a Dune episode that I had the pleasure of being on to talk about like the comparing the movies to the book. So that was awesome for the ECG podcast.
Yeah, RIP. We might do a special. There's been grumblings about just doing a special at some point, like just to shoot the shit for like an extended period of time and check in. But
Get the
that's
band
right,
back
man.
together, baby.
Please do, because I got into it like right before you guys shut down, and
I
took it personally.
I'm sorry. It was we saw your subscription and we were like, we've peaked. Nowhere to go but down from here.
It's fine. It's fine. I know, if you like a podcast, you like a show, you like a restaurant, it's going to shut down. You just gotta accept it.
Such is life. Yeah, maybe someday we'll do like a monthly or something, like or talk about. But it was fun, and that episode was a lot of fun. It's cool. That was like I think a lot of people's first like kind of venture back into movie theaters, which was what a movie to kick it off. I was so glad to have seen that in the cinema. Well, excellent. Thank you for your choice. And now I'm like tempted to see if that's streaming anywhere, just so I can put it on in the background, if nothing else, and enjoy the cheesy dialogue and the amazing soundtrack by Toto.
Dude, I mean, yeah, rocking out like electric guitars and sci-fi totally go together, and Toto is amazing. So
yeah,
and strangely enough. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry.
What's up?
I just speaking of the guitars, I just recall there being like some kind of like riff or like guitar solo while he's riding the sandworm, and it's just like
it's
like,
genius. Yes.
Does it get kind of like Mad Maxy for a bit?
Oh yeah,
kind
arguably.
of.
Yeah, actually, yeah, that's a good comparison.
It's not a bad comparison.
Oh,
actually, yeah.
Man, that's a good versus right there.
Mad Max.
We'll add it to next season.
Yep. Taking notes right now, May. Taking notes. It's gonna happen.
I'm sorry, what were you gonna say?
I had like a really weird thought, like as we're connecting all the dots and all the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon and like we usually do. I think the first time I ever saw the original Dune was sort of the extended version, because there's like a little introduction that they do. There's 2 introductions. There's like one that's narrated by Princess Irulan, and then there's another one that's like the extended introduction that gives you like the history that leads up to the story in Dune. And so like the machine uprising that they have and all that. And so I think that was the version that I saw, and it was on the Disney Channel late at night back when I was a kid. So just as a really weird sort of like, I don't know, just everything that we've been talking about with Disney as well. Thank you for that.
Yeah, they used to show some odd stuff on the Disney Channel, and they
that
like
surprises me.
I know,
yeah.
Like for some of like the really weird stuff that's in that film, maybe they cut that. Maybe they had like a censored version where they didn't have.
Oh, they always censored the shit out of
like Vladimir Harkonnen and all that. Yeah,
the kids bopped it.
Yeah, big time. Like it was kind of odd. I think we have some VHS like recordings of movies off Disney Channel still from when I
Yep.
was like a wee lad. And like I remember like the first time I saw the uncensored version of some of those films, I was just like, oh wow, like this feels filthier than it probably would have, because I've seen the censored version and seeing like what's put back. Like it's like you're really aware of it. I
Yep.
don't know. Hey, long live David Lynch's Dune, even if he's not a big fan of it. That reminds me, before we move on, if you've never seen the documentary Jodorowsky's Dune, that is one of the coolest stories like in film production history, like ever. So he tasked HR Giger to do like all the designs of like the planets and like a lot of like the, I think like costumes and stuff. Like that was, I think, like technically in production when it shut down. Like they had built sets and stuff. It's a very interesting story about a movie that like kind of like happened, or like almost, I mean, like it was like right there. That movie would have been terrible, but I would have watched it in a heartbeat. Just like all the changes that they were going to make with it. But yeah, good
Yep.
book for a documentary if you want to see something kind of interesting. All right, well, let's move on to our topic of the show, which is The Gift, specifically a scene that Will nominated. So Will, I'm going to turn it over to you, my guy. Take us away.
Cool. Well, I guess I'll give a little bit of a background about the plot for The Gift. For those who have not seen it yet, I would definitely recommend it before you listen to our podcast, because I feel like we'll probably, spoiler alert, quite a bit as to what happens. But if you're into the mystery, the Southern Gothic horror mystery stuff, then I definitely recommend watching the film first, just so that you can enjoy it. But generally speaking, the plot is we've got Cate Blanchett, who's the protagonist of the film. She plays Annie Wilson, who's a widowed mother living with her 3 kids in Brixton, Georgia. I want to say it's Georgia. I know it's Brixton, but the title of the film, The Gift, is referring to her ability to see events that are either going to happen or have happened. So her clairvoyance ability is the gift that she's able to use to help people in the town who come to her asking for her to read them or do a reading for them using the tarot cards that I've got up here on the behind me for those who are tuning in to watch our YouTube video. But essentially what happens is the fiance of the local school principal goes missing, and Annie's abilities are able to help the local authorities in locating the body of Jessica King, who is played by Katie Holmes. And then also helps to implicate Donnie Barksdale, played by Keanu Reeves, in her murder. And for the record, and I know I said this last week, but Keanu Reeves gives an all too believable, in my opinion, gives a all too believable performance as an absolute redneck piece of trash in this film. Like he is very creepy in this movie. There's a few twists and turns. There's very notable auteur jump scares, quick zooms, horror-esque makeup choices, and camera tricks that are pretty standard fare for a Sam Raimi film. So if you've seen other stuff that he's done, Evil Dead is like the big thing that people always talk about as like a cult classic. But you know, he did the most recent Doctor Strange film, the Spider-Man films back in the day, back in when I don't even know how old I was, but it's been like 10 years, longer than that, way longer.
2004,
than that. So,
I think,
yeah,
is when the original, or 2002 maybe.
Yeah,
it was
20 years
when we were in high school. Yeah.
So yeah, and actually has a couple of folks in this film that were in the Spider-Man movies. So for those who were watching, we had the same lady, and let me pull up her name real quick, Rosemary Harris, who plays Annie's grandmother, who was Aunt May in the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movie. And also J.K. Simmons. I gotta give a shout out to that dude who's in like everything. But he plays the sheriff in this film, and he's very typically J.K. Simmons. So appreciate having him there. But I digress. So there's a few, as I mentioned, there's a few twists and turns. We eventually do find out by the end and get closure on who the real killer is and what happened to Jessica King. And an important side note as well, because this is important, we do value this in our film choices, that no animals were hurt in the making of this film that I'm aware of. We did not see any dogs get killed, unlike some other choices before. We did see a cute little dog, a little puppy that was running along some kids that were absolutely ignoring the dog, but that's about the most of it. So
yeah, no, and then there was a pet dog too.
yeah,
so good dog content. I will say, like, very strong content warning for domestic violence.
yes,
we'll get into
absolutely.
that, but like that, yeah, strong content warning on that one.
There's a lot of it's very relevant in a lot of ways to stuff going on today, but you're correct that definitely be warned about language, be warned about domestic abuse. So but yeah, so before we get into the scene that I chose for us to talk about, I'd like to get both of your impressions of the film overall. And in this case, I believe this is one of the rare chances where, kind of like with the Deer Hunter, this is one where neither of you have seen it before, So the first, Chris, I know, May, we always pick on you. So I'm going to turn this over to Chris first to get your impressions on the film. Yeah, man, you're up to plate. So tell us your thoughts.
Yeah, so I would say, like, overall, I found this film to be fairly enjoyable, if not a little uneven. Like, some of the performances for me were significantly better than others. For example, like, I agree that Keanu Reeves is actually pretty believable in his, like, general attitudes and, like, what that character is. I found his Southern accent to be atrocious. Like, it dropped like every other word or so. Yeah, I didn't care for a lot of the accents. Having grown up in the South, it was believable for only a handful of characters. Standouts for me, though, performance, well, I thought Giovanni Ribisi was amazing. Like, he was I mean, that performance was great. Kate Blanchett has a couple of really standout moments. The courtroom scene in particular, pretty powerful stuff. I thought that I had the twist nailed down like really early, and I was like I was pleasantly surprised that like I'd kind of overthought it. What it ends up kind of being was I didn't think really any more or less interesting than what I picked, but that's not really the point, I guess, of the movie. Yeah, like, overall, I would say, like, I enjoyed it. There's some, I think my overall engagement kind of, like, waxed and waned throughout, just depending on it. I was very frustrated by some of the threads that are kind of left, like, unresolved at the end of it. I think would probably be my biggest gripe. In particular, the Keanu Reeves, Hilary Swank, like, that storyline. Like, they spend so much time on it. I would have liked a little more closure there, but yeah, overall good movie. I'm glad that I watched it. Like, I mean, it's one that was completely off my radar, and had a overall good time watching it. So
excellent. All right, May, what are your thoughts?
I think it is a good, like, Southern Gothic horror movie. Overall, I didn't super love / enjoy it. Part of that is just, like, my personal, like, viewing preference is I get very uncomfortable with, like, domestic violence scenes, so I, like, watch this one in pieces, which is, like, the intention, obviously, to make you uncomfortable. But yeah, I didn't love it. I did obviously like Kate Blanchett's performance. Giovanni is, does a great job as Buddy. I had the same issue, I think, with Keanu as Donnie. I think part of that is also just, like, knowing him in, like, so many cool or lovable roles. It's, like, really hard to see him as the bad guy. So that was kind of jarring, because it's like you really want to be pissed about all the stuff he's doing on screen, but also it's like, it's Keanu. How are you going to be mad at Keanu? So that, like, took me out of it a little bit. As far as the twist goes, I feel like, because I used to have a bit of a true crime problem, I, like, knew the ending right away. It's always the husband. Like, it's always the husband. I'm sorry.
I overthought that, man. Like, I thought it was the dad, actually, because there's a very, like, way too familiar kiss, and I was like, oh, like,
yeah, that was gross.
she's like a victim of, like, sexual abuse. It turns out that's a different character in the movie, but like,
yeah.
Sorry.
There is a lot of mirroring, which I do always appreciate, like callbacks, and whenever a movie or a narrative has like a very sort of like tight thread to the whole thing. So I did like that everything was kind of mirrored, and like I actually thought everything was tied up pretty neatly at the end. And so like that gave it like bonus points in my book. Especially when she's kind of like realizing at the end who it is, and she's thinking back to, for instance, what Valerie was saying about how like angry like and murderous she felt because of the cheating, and her connecting that to like, oh, the guy she was cheating on probably also felt that way. And like making those mental connections was interesting, and I thought that was good, just from like a filmmaking perspective. But yeah, like I'll be honest, this is like maybe a 3 out of 5 for me, but I think like within the genre it's in, it's a good film.
Yeah, I think I liked it more than I thought I would going into it. Originally, it was something that my mom had seen, and I think probably for the actors that were in it. And she likes stories that typically have a happy ending or that have likable characters. And so when she watched it, she was just like, I can't with these people. And so I understood that going in. And then I watched it and I thought, wow, I thought this was going to be an absolute train wreck. And this was like pretty, I mean, in my mind, in my opinion, I thought that was actually pretty legit. And you're right, the accents are, that's the hardest part, I think, of any film, trying to be true to a certain region. And it's rarely done as well as like certain instances like Coen brothers movies, where you've got like No Country for Old Men or Fargo, where people try really hard to nail the accents if they don't already have them. But yeah, it is always funny watching people try to be from the South, and then you're like, yeah, you're kind of there most of the time, but every once in a while you hear the real voice creep through, or a variation of it. So but I think just aesthetically I liked a lot of the establishing shots. I felt like I was in the South. So I appreciated that. Some of the camera tricks I liked, kind of the typical sort of like jump scares. I don't know, I get into that kind of stuff, so I appreciated that. But yeah, I think overall I liked it better than I thought I would. Not, I would say still definitely has its parts that could have been done better, but ultimately it was something that I came away with and thought that was pretty good. I could see it happening, and I felt like the characters felt realistic to a certain degree, but also very sort of difficult to watch in some ways too, because you get like the small town life where, you know, the local authority, like in the case of this film, one of the guys in law enforcement knows Donnie, so he's pretty much like on Donnie's side and doesn't take Annie seriously when she talks about being threatened by Donnie, or just general abuse to women in the movie, and that doesn't get reported because they're afraid of what's going to happen if they do. And you get that with and her name's escaping me, and I apologize, I should remember this. With
Valerie?
Hilary Swank's character, yeah, Valerie
Yeah.
Barksdale, who's abused by Donnie, played by Hilary Swank. That's, you know, it's hard to watch, and feel like, you know, to have somebody who feels like there's nothing they can do about the situation that they're in. And then Giovanni Ribisi, man, like for dealing with mental health and dealing with childhood abuse like that, I mean, there's a whole lot of stuff going on in this film to unpack that I think they do a good job of introducing it and trying to have a resolution, but you're still like, it's very powerful in what it's trying to convey as well. So
It is doing a lot, and I think one thing that helped it work for me was, especially with like Buddy and Annie, was partly their dynamic, because
mhm.
Buddy is obviously someone who's been through a lot, but also can be very difficult to talk to, and Annie just has like a supernatural level of patience and um kind of like reassurance for him and willingness to listen and help. And I think it's their dynamic that kind of grounds both of those characters, because I think there's definitely some unbelievable aspects to both of them, right? And
Mhm.
I think that their relationship does a lot to ground it. I will also say I appreciated with Annie, just the fact that she's, you know, shown to have these powers, and it's like communicated through the film that, at least in the world of the film, like these are legit, right? She actually has this gift. But it's also shown that she has her own issues in terms of like running away from grief, not really facing the death of her husband ever. And also being someone who's so used to taking care of everyone else that she has no idea how to ask for help or how to care for others. The number of times I was screaming at my screen because she like could have asked one of her kids to go like call someone or call the police, or like was on the phone with someone actively and probably should have said, hey, by the way, someone's breaking into my house.
Yeah.
And she
No,
just
I got
doesn't want to
this.
ask for help. Drove me crazy. But it was good dimensionality to her character.
Yep.
One of the things I love about Annie was that, like, even though she does have the powers, like, often the most helpful thing that she would do with these characters that she was sort of like servicing, like as a psychic, was just good old fashioned, like real life grounded advice, right? Like, she often kind of like pivots from like the supernatural side of things to like, hey, like, take everything else like out of it. Like, let me just give you some real advice about like, like your real world problems, like using a little bit of common sense and like, like maybe a bit of I don't know, like maternal instincts, right, for some of the characters. I think that made her, this character could have come off, I think, as being like a little bit like cheap, like Miss Cleo-y, and like I think the fact that they allow, and like the dialogue and some of those scenes, like for her to just be like a real person that actually like can just talk to them and like put the powers aside for a second, just say like, hey, your husband's a piece of shit. I don't need tarot cards. I can see this on your fucking face. Like, your husband's a piece of shit. You should get out of there, right? Or whatever the case is for them. I mean, there's multiple instances of that film, so I like that a lot.
To kind of pivot then, talking about her supernatural abilities, her clairvoyance, if we can just kind of head over to the scene that I've got. The one that I chose is actually relatively early in the film. It's when we get the introduction to Wayne Collins, who is the school principal who's engaged to Jessica King, played by Greg Kinnear. And he and Annie are talking about Annie's oldest son. I think it's her oldest son he's talking about, who got into a fight at school. And during their chat, Jessica shows up. We get some foreshadowing as to her fate when Annie has a premonition. And part of that involves, like, we see like a little bit of a slow motion. There's a gust of wind in Annie's hair. There's a green pencil that we see rolling off of Wayne's desk and then falls and hits the ground. But when it would normally hit the ground, instead it falls into and hits this little layer, this pool of water that's on top of the ground. And we get this little quick shot of Jessica's foot that's exposed and looks kind of slightly decaying. After which Jessica, asks about, did you see something bad? Are we gonna, do you think we'll live happily ever after, kind of a thing? And I think that I chose that scene in particular just because I appreciate some of the parts throughout the film where we get some nice little bits of foreshadowing, both direct and indirect. And so for direct foreshadowing, you get a film that's blatantly kind of telling you something obviously bad is going to happen at some point. And in this case, it's Jessica's foot. But we also get a little bit of indirect foreshadowing where you're given some clues just based on how the characters are arranged, what's around them in the scene. Like the two things, at least, that came to mind were the fish imagery that you see behind them. Both there's a fish drawing that's on the wall, like a little child's drawing that's up on the wall, and then also like a mobile, like a little fish that's hanging from the ceiling that's back there, which I thought was kind of cool. And then sort of like the pencil falling to the ground, it's this green pencil. So you're thinking like, okay, wood kind of associated with the log that we see Jessica thrown against when she's dead, or possibly even symbolizing the tree that Annie later sees when she has another premonition, seeing Jessica floating up in it. And so, I don't know, those were a couple of things that stood out to me. There's a few other spots throughout the film too. You get nice little bits and pieces that once you see how it unfolds at the end, you're like, oh, okay, so there's like a little clue here and there, or some sort of symbolism that associated with it. And so that was just something that I thought was enjoyable to go back and rewatch and kind of catch some of that. But I'd like to turn it over to you guys now, get some feedback on you if that was something else that you noticed or other thoughts you might have about this scene, or just because the scene is so brief, if there were other scenes that may have had a little bit more of an impact to you that you wanted to talk about instead. So, and I guess, May, if it's okay with you, I'll pass it over to you to start.
Yeah. So for me, the most interesting part of the scene was sort of like Annie's recovery when she's asked again after she has that kind of vision. Like, so do you think we'll, have her happily ever after? And you don't even like see her. You see her hesitate a little bit, but she seems like she knows it's better not to say what she's seeing at this point, like pretty confidently. And it's interesting to think about kind of what's going through her head in that moment, because at that point, like, it seems like she is fond of Wayne, and I don't think she really lets herself suspect him until the very end of the film. And so I'm kind of wondering if her silence is more of a, I don't know this person, I'm not going to give them news that could, be taken the wrong way, or if it's more of a, if I speak, I'm afraid no one's going to take me seriously kind of thing, or if maybe it was just a bit of both of that. But it's interesting to see kind of how she handles seeing such a grim omen, especially since it seems like her visions, at least when she talks about like what she saw before her husband went off and had his fatal accident, it seems like her visions generally aren't so explicit. So for her to get an unusually strong thing coming in like that and say, oh, I definitely need to keep this a secret. Yeah, I just wonder what was kind of going through her head. And it seems like she knows that even if there's a possibility of changing it, she just should keep her mouth shut for now.
That's an excellent point. There's actually something that I thought about too, which was, yeah, why, like, the one thing that she decided not to say anything about was something that was like very obviously like foreboding. And so, no, I'm 100% with you on that. I thought that was very interesting as well. Chris, how about you?
Yeah, I like the scene even more after like having finished the film. So I watched it a couple times, like when I got to it, and I was like, okay, uh, this is, it's neat, like in like what it's doing. Like obviously, it's prepping you for like the rest of the film. But going back, like after knowing where it all ends up and having all the facts, like everything in that is very intentional. Green like is like a color of jealousy, right? A pencil itself is like a tool of academia, so it's like it's very literally telling you like like the pencil associated with the principal, green being the color of jealousy, who's responsible, or who's going to be responsible for this horrible thing that happens. Of course, like when you're watching it, you don't have any of that context, right? Or maybe not thinking about it, but it seems like kind of you're like, ah, man, like that's a really cool, like subtle way of kind of pointing to like who the killer is. As far as like why she doesn't speak up, like one of the things I kind of wondered over and over while watching the movie was like whether or not she has the ability to like change the future, or if it's like one of those things where it's just kind of like predetermined fate. Like I think to like Minority Report, with the precogs, where like it's sort of like what they see is like can be like stopped, right? But like there's like it's always going to happen if it's not like if there's not intervention. And I don't know if it's like the same rules, and maybe she doesn't say anything because it's like, well, I can't stop this, or maybe I think to May's point, it's just something where she's kind of rattled and doesn't know if anyone's going to believe her. Like it would be an odd thing to be like, hey, I don't mean to break up the party, but you're in grave danger, like what is somebody going to say to that, so. And also I'm sure she's probably wasn't in the best mental state, like with what's going on with her son. She's trying to get out of there pretty quickly, like from that discussion. She's got tears in her eyes as Katie Holmes walks in. So but yeah, I really like the scene again. Like I had way more impact like when I went back and watched it after the fact. I thought it was it's cool, very cool.
It also feels very ironic for Wayne to be counseling her on getting her son into therapy when clearly he needs some.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think with that in mind, then were there any other scenes that stood out to you in terms of foreshadowing that you really enjoyed later in the film, or that maybe just tied back in really nicely, like a little bit of clues that you notice later that tied into whether it was the ultimate reveal at the end or just sort of other issues that characters were going with. And if it helps too, I can throw out a couple that just come to mind, which is one, the bicycle that they found in the pond, which then we get another shot of a blue bike that's outside of Wayne's house. That's a nice little bit of foreshadowing. And then also speaking of blue, actually as a color that shows up a lot in this film, the blue diamond that that Giovanni Ribisi's character Buddy mentions a couple of times when he's having basically he's struggling through a lot of emotional baggage that he has from his childhood and trying to make sense of what it is that he's referring to, and then finally learning later what that is in relation to. So just as a couple other ideas there, and May, I'm going to pass it back over to you to get your feedback on that.
I feel like this is a film where I'll admit I had trouble appreciating a lot of the subtle foreshadowing just because there is so much overt foreshadowing in the form of like her visions matching up basically just to like later later screen grabs, especially like towards the end of the film. Like you see her see herself like struggling after she's been hit on the head several minutes before she gets hit on the head, and then it's the exact same scene that plays, you know, a few minutes later when she's actually hit by Wayne. So yeah, I feel like I didn't appreciate a lot of the solar foreshadowing, unfortunately. I do think that the thing you mentioned with the pencil is interesting because it seems like logs are a common issue. There's the log that she is like chained to, there's the log she's thrown against, there's the pencil. And I don't know, just like I feel like especially with something that's kind of the Southern Gothic, like the idea of just like kind of like dead decaying wood or plant matter or whatever is I don't know, I feel like that must carry some kind of metaphorical meaning.
I like it. Excellent. Yeah, that's I would say definitely something to more connected with nature to some degree, or perhaps uh the danger of some sort of supernatural forces connected with nature. I feel like very often in films that are trying to take place in the South, that the environment is very, in a lot of them, it's like the environment is very important in the sense of like establishing where you're at, establishing like the community that they're in. And so just a lot of I don't know, just looking at all the Spanish moss everywhere, basically, and thinking, oh, yeah, this looks like it, or seeing like shots of the sky, and some of it too, like you can tell very obviously like done up for the sake of the film, like not what it would really look like entirely, but almost has sort of like a supernatural sort of feeling in and of itself to making it like sort of real, but not entirely real, which I liked about that. But yeah, Chris, how about you? Any other thoughts about any clues, foreshadowing, Southern Gothic in general?
Yeah. So, well, a couple of things. So specifically with the foreshadowing, so when I said I overanalyzed like who the killer was, so like when the hands were around her throats, I noticed the watch and like the business like attire, and that's why I thought there's actually when the tarot readings happening with Jessica King, thank you. Her dad actually like covers up his watch, and I was like, oh yeah, clearly him. Like, because I was on the lookout, I was like, oh, there's like a watch. And it turns out it was just like a very innocuous thing that the actor probably did like in the moment, but I thought for sure, I'm like, oh yeah, he did it.
It's funny you say that because I saw that. I didn't pick up on the watch, but I picked up on the formal attire, and my mind went to thinking briefly like, oh, maybe it was the prosecutor that she was having an affair with.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that was my second fake out actually, is like the scene where she goes over and he's drinking his whiskey and talking about sleeping dogs lie and do you want money, and it's like, oh well, damn, I'm wrong, it's him. And then of course when the reveal is Greg Kinnear, it's like, oh fuck, of course it's the husband boyfriend, like and then I was like, I way overthought this, but I do like that sequence in general, like with her being like strangled, because it's a nice little fake out for like, oh, it's Keanu Reeves. Then you realize, oh wait, like there's like he doesn't wear suits, so who is this? And then like when you kind of connect the dots, that she's sort of having like an empathetic experience to the actual like murder victim Jessica King. It's kind of neat. One of the things I love about the Southern Gothic genre is there's always like this idea of like the grotesque, and I thought sort of the images of the corpse was a neat way to do that without kind of like, it's a little bit outmoded probably these days to have characters that have like physical deformities as being like the topic of horror, but that's kind of a classic trope. So I think a neat way that they got around that was having like the bloated, half decayed like corpse as being like kind of standing in for that element of the genre.
I do have just kind of I guess a thought question, or I guess also kind of a plot question. So Annie, she sees like dead people that are significant to her life often, like her grandma, right? And you don't find this out until later, but Buddy after he's dead, and of course the murder victim. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think she ever sees her husband, right?
I was thinking about that too after I watched it. It was also, that it was interesting that he didn't show up.
I wonder if he like is actually dead, or if he like bounced and left town, and that's like part of her avoidance.
It's my chance to get out.
I
That's
don't know.
Interesting thing to consider. Yeah, that would be add a dimension, a sadder dimension to the movie. Maybe she knows it deep down.
Because you'd think that she would see him, and I thought that like maybe the reason she doesn't is just because she really hasn't processed his death yet. She's not like ready, but then she like seems to kind of accept it towards the end of the film. And there's that final scene in the graveyard, and I like replayed that looking to see if his like standing somewhere in the graveyard, like his ghost or something. Nothing. So yeah, I just like, why isn't he there? I'm dying to know.
He didn't really love her. Like he could be there, but he's like, nah.
Damn.
No, I'm kidding. Okay, I kid.
Got ghosted by the ghost. Damn. All right. Ooh. I feel like, I don't know. When I watched it, I guess my impression was that I'm trying to remember if it seemed like Annie was surprised to see her grandmother like this was the first time this had ever happened, or if this was something that had happened like on a recurring basis. But maybe that was like, oh, this is the first time, that she's seen her grandmother since she passed. Or maybe it just has to do with the fact that her grandmother was there to be sort of like a comforting source for her before what was going to happen, is sort of like, not as well, I guess in some sense foreshadowing as well, but also to sort of be there to help comfort her before what was going to happen happened. And then I it's interesting too, like with Buddy at the very end, where that maybe it was just something that he needed to do himself, like like that was his character's motivation before moving on to whatever came after. So yeah, I don't know, it's interesting. Like I felt like maybe it was just like a one-time deal, like this is just needed to come in for this one thing to help out, and then and then move on from there. But
we'll never know unless they do a sequel.
Yeah, come on, bring it back. Come on, Sam Raimi, do
it. And that's assuming like it actually was Buddy, of course. Like they kind of make, there's like the line of like, they leave it a little ambiguous, like head injuries are funny things, like did her fight or flight response like kick in and she's just misremembered like what happened. She seems to be fairly capable. The ghost angle is cooler, it's more in line with like the Southern Gothic genre, but
yeah. I guess the question is, when did she really get that handkerchief back, right? There's like a deleted scene where she picked it up later when she's trying to stop Buddy from like going all pyro on his dad, or if it was like something else. So, but yeah. And man, that scene by itself, I mean, that's, we could talk about that, but for the sake of time, and also maybe just everything else that we've gone through, perhaps save that for a future discussion. But
yeah,
talking about when he tries to go Denethor, like
oh man,
Lord of the Rings reference for 2 episodes in a row.
Hey, you know what? And it's coming, the Rings of Power, man. So I expect more from you on that to hold it back.
Yeah, not to poo-poo on that. Like those trailers have haven't done much. I mean, other than like looking cool, like
Yep.
I'm gonna watch it because it's Lord of the Rings, but not to
Yeah.
digress too much. But they've done nothing to like really make me any more or less excited than when like the project was announced. Like other than like, okay, like they clearly have spent a lot of money on this, but
Yeah.
Mm. I
Excellent.
thought they looked
Yeah.
cool.
it looks cool.
Yeah.
I just
Yeah.
to me like the Hobbit, looked cool too, but like
Oh,
there's
these
a
do not
very
look like the Hobbit.
no, I know, but also like it's really going to be the characters and the storytelling, right? That's going to carry you through for however many seasons they plan. So we'll see.
Nice. I'll be honest, I haven't actually seen the trailers for it. I just know that it was announced like way back whenever, and so I'll have to check it out. I think I was sort of I shouldn't say over Lord of the Rings. I think I was less hyped about it after The Hobbit, just because I felt like when they did Lord of the Rings, also, gosh, how long ago? 20 years now, too. When back in the day, it was so good. I didn't think it could be topped. So, but yeah.
I do love this age. Like I've read the Silmarillion, and I do like this like era. It's to see like the rise of Sauron like is very, very potentially going to be awesome because there's a lot of cool stories that come out of this, but we shall see.
Excellent.
Sorry for the digression.
Oh no, actually, if we want to continue this train of thought, we still need to come up with a name for our Hobbit band. So might want to get on that. I mean, I got let's see, the Bag Enders, maybe. Like we could throw that out there. I don't know. Got to come up with some names, man.
Still brainstorming, but
Yeah.
I know one song that you could do is like potatoes would be a cool like
Yes.
with the hyphens. Yeah.
Oh,
Yes.
100%.
And then in parentheses, of course, boil them, mash them, stick them in a stew.
Oh man. All right. It's gonna happen. All right. I just want you guys by the end of the season, it is going to happen.
I did think of an album name. I think we should have one titled the Shire Shanties.
Hey, I like
Yeah.
it. Nice. I could get behind that.
They have some pub songs like in part and some of those that are really like memorable in this film. So
Yeah.
I'd be down.
Half the songwriting is already done. Easy.
Yeah.
On an even further tangent, since we're just inceptioning down
Do it.
Tolkien land.
Blah.
A really, really lovely couple that we met in New Zealand, like when we were in New Zealand, on this epic hike on the North Island, and then like literally a week and a half later we bumped into them in town in Queenstown, like South, like so like miles and miles away. Anyway, the gentleman, a guy by the name of Travis Sigler, owns it's called Wyrd, Mead and Leather. It's a meadery and like leather shop in Portland. He was just on the Friendship Onion. So Dominic Monaghan and Billy Boyd's podcast, which was just awesome to see, like, because he's an awesome dude. He's worked really hard to start this business up. So he got to like appear with like two of his like favorite. I mean, he's like huge Lord of the Ring Tolkien like nut. So to be like on a podcast with the 2 stars, I'm sure was something that sent him over the moon. So Travis, if you listen to this podcast, dude, that was awesome. Well done. All the success is well deserved. You've worked your ass off. So check out Wyrd, Mead and Leather if you're out and about on the internet. They do ship nationwide, both leather goods and mead. And if I ever get out that way, I've got to stop by it. It's like all medieval themed on the inside. It's a really cool looking mead hall. So
that's awesome. Yes, definitely.
All right.
All right, guys.
For the
there are no apologies on this show for anything that we talk about. Unless somebody does like a serious faux pas that we need to have HR come in about, I think you're good. So
Dog's HR, Sumter's.
I was going to say the best HR consultant you'll ever have. Yes. Well, no, that's great. And truthfully, that's the best part of having these discussions with you guys, is that we can go down the rabbit hole. And if we don't have time for it, it'll just get, it'll get cut later, but we'll always have the memory. So that's what matters.
And then it becomes exclusive content just for the 3 of us.
Look, it's on our Patreon. If you want to see the extended version, where we ask other questions and share exciting stories and secrets about Southern Gothic horror, please contribute to us.
I'll do the Screen Quest, the B-sides. It'll just be like little 5-minute clips of us going off on tangents that don't make it to the episode.
We should definitely have some kind of a blooper reel or tangent reel.
Be all for it. I've saved all the stuff. Like I archive. I archive everything like that we do, like for now anyway, until storage space becomes a problem. Why not?
There you go. I mean, and you can cut this as well, but I definitely remember Marianne trying to not so subtly get past you. So I mean, look, that could be one of them. I know that's probably not going to happen, but
sure, you've probably seen me like have to stop and plug in my headphones like 5 or 6 times. So
it all
the
happens.
dogs
stitch all that together.
You know, the dogs bark at like a FedEx worker that dropped off a package, or or that my cat that wanted to leave that one time and it was like, sorry, gotta go. But nice. All right, guys. Well, that wraps up all the questions, thoughts, musings, rabbit holes that I had at least on the docket. But before I turn it over for our final, well, I guess to roll, I'm sorry, completely different game. Before we pull the card for the next exciting quest we go on, and also perhaps play a game, I just wanted to throw it back out to you guys if you have any other thoughts.
I was gonna say, especially like with the murder mystery genre, like it is kind of nice for like the twist just to be the thing that is like, I guess statistically the most likely. Like I said jokingly at the start, it's like it's always the husband. I mean, Ellie. Jeez, okay.
Blooper.
Husband Ellie. Oh man.
Dun 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 dun.
Anyway, it is refreshing, I guess, in a way, for it to like not be what usually happens in movies, which is like, oh yeah, obviously it would be the mentally ill character. So like I was very scared for half of the film that it was going to be Buddy, and very, very glad when that didn't happen.
Yeah, it wasn't a cheap like twist like at all.
Yeah.
So that was good. I don't have much to add on the movie. This is oddly enough the second Billy Bob Thornton project I watched this weekend.
Nice. Yeah.
So Marianne for so long has been trying to get me to watch All the Pretty Horses, and I love that book so much that I've kind of like really resisted. And so I was like, all right, like I'll watch it. So that's what we watched Friday night, and it was directed by Billy Bob Thornton. I think the script was done by somebody else, but so when I saw his name come across the writing credits for The Gift, I was like, huh, the universe sometimes just like pulls you into like strange places. I had no idea before either watching that movie or this film that he was involved in either of his projects, and here we are. So
yeah, I could never really tell if it's like the computer algorithm that's just like listening to us or seeing what we search for when we do these podcasts. But I feel like every time we talk about something, I see a film, or it's either the film we've talked about, or I see stuff for like something very much related to it, strangely, that pops up like a day or two later, or just even later in the week. And so it's like, oh, we just talked about this film on our podcast. Yeah, probably because I did like a lot of Google searching for stuff beforehand. But yeah, it is pretty cool though, just like the little connections here and there. So
speaking of Google searches, I'm probably going to regret this later, but did you guys catch the Confederate flag in the back of the courtroom? Yes. I was like Googling like what state flags had like Confederate motifs in it, because I was like, I know Mississippi does, maybe Georgia did. They did not, so that was just the Confederate flag just casually in the courtroom.
Yep.
In the courtroom, and on the front of Donnie's supersized tired truck that he drove up in.
Surprise me.
Yeah, no, absolutely not. No, that's very much in character for him. But yeah, no, with the courtroom scene, yeah, that was interesting too. Yeah.
I mean, it flew at, up until recently. It might still in some like state houses, but it was like on state houses, right? Like, so it doesn't surprise. I mean, didn't surprise me really. I still kind of rolled my eyes at it when I saw it, but yeah. I
remember when they took it down in South Carolina a few years, 8 years ago. I am so bad with time since COVID. I apologize. Don't ever look at me to be a historian about anything.
Hey, time is relative. Einstein himself said so.
It's true. So Well, Chris, I think I'm going to pass it back over to you, sir. Thank you for the pleasure of letting me share this film with you both. And let us see what we have in store for the next time.
Do we want to draw or do the game first?
Oh, that is correct.
I say we draw. I
Perhaps
saw we
game
draw it.
first.
We'll draw at the end. I'm gonna do a quick pass to May. It's gonna be like, a fast paced like final minute of a basketball game. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
give it to
All
May
right.
first.
Okay. Will, pick a number between 1 and 25.
23.
Okay. So what we're going to do is I'm going to read off a randomly selected trope, depending on the number Will just gave me, from tvtropes.com. And I think in the interest of time, we should just each kind of give like our top example of a movie that has this trope and maybe talk a bit about it. We can go around and do that. So for number 23, it's going to be a fake action prologue. So a film that kind of like seems like an action film, but turns out it isn't. So the vibe of the whole film does not match that like action-packed opening scene.
Oh, interesting.
I have one. It is one that we talked about kind of recently, but it's the first one that comes to my mind. So for There Will Be Blood, the first thing, it's not exactly like action packed, but it's just such a different tone, like that first 15 minutes from the rest of the film. And there's a ton of suspense. You're just kind of like waiting for the shoe to drop in terms of this guy like mining on his own in what seems like a really dangerous situation with dynamite. And then the rest of the film like has its like moments of sporadic violence, but not in that like kind of same tension building lone like workman way, right? Like there's tension in the last scene for sure, and then a couple of the other like heated conversations and such. But yeah, definitely like at a abrupt tone shift after the first like 15 or 20 minutes of that film.
I think that's a good choice. Yeah, it slows down pretty significantly, and it's odd because there's very little dialogue, like in that, and it does seem in a lot of ways more suspenseful than a lot of what comes after for a long time in that, despite the fact that it has no dialogue. My favorite movie of all time, like very favorite, Alfred Hitchcock's Vertigo. Like it has literally a rooftop chase.
Yeah.
And then it's like 30 minutes of Scotty driving around tailing Madeline again with no dialogue and like really, really amazing music and little else just besides Jimmy Stewart perving. So I think that's an easy choice.
There you
now
go.
that I think about it.
There you go.
Awesome.
Yeah, no, that film is definitely like very start and stop with the action. It has kind of like 3 main scenes that you're on the edge of your seat for, and otherwise it's like, this is a creep.
Madeline, it can't matter to you, Madeline. Sorry. Nothing like telling a woman that her hair color and general appearance can't matter to her. Like, oh God.
But it's very important to him.
I'd say Casino Royale, when we first got the introduction to Daniel Craig's James Bond, because the beginning of that film is, and I this might sound weird because I'm talking about a James Bond movie, but I guess I'll qualify it by saying that maybe it's not as like action packed as most James Bond films. I don't know if this will cut the mustard or not, but
I think you made a great choice. Continue. Okay. No, you got Excellent. It, dude.
So like in the very beginning, we see like this parkour chase scene that goes on for I don't know how long, and it culminates in basically the typical giant explosion to end the conflict that we're so used to in most James Bond movies. So it's like it's a very typical opening for a James Bond film, but then the rest of it's much more subdued in terms of like actually sort of trying to, I don't know, like it's like the long game and trying to sleuth out the bad guy and what he's gonna do and how Bond's gonna make his move. And it's a lot darker and more sort of like character driven to a certain extent, like much more than you would expect from a James Bond movie, for his character and for Vesper. And culminates not only in a lack of a car chase scene that you get pumped for, because you're like, oh, all right, he's gonna race this, this sports car or whatever it was that he hopped into at the toward the end, and he crashes it. It's like he goes around a curve, and I think it's Vesper's body is tied up or out in the road, and he swerves to avoid her, and he flips the car, and he gets hurt, and then suddenly cut to James Bond getting tortured by the bad guy and almost getting killed by the bad guy, except for like the bad guy associated with the bad guy that we learn about later. And so I thought, this is so uncharacteristic for a James Bond movie. And it's not that I didn't like it. I actually really liked Casino Royale, but it was so unexpected to see like a movie that hits the ground running with action, and then it's like, no, we'll have some later, but not like what you're used to as the James Bond that a lot of people grew up with.
Hot
That's a
take. I
great
think
pick.
Casino Royale is the best James Bond movie. Besides, like you could make the argument, I think that Skyfall like might be, but
That is the best James Bond movie.
Yeah, I'm partially
I think
Skyfall.
but I think like it's, I don't know, man. Like I think Skyfall is the most James Bond. Like maybe it's the best because it's more of what you expect, but Casino Royale is like up there. I don't mean just the Craig Bonds. Like I think those are two of the best like ever. And I think what I love so much about Casino Royale was that it's essentially like a detective story for a large part of it. And the reasons that you just cited, like getting to know who he like is and aspects of his personality, because it's a very different version of Bond than what you got before. Like there's some things like that are obviously carry over, but very much of a statement for him to say to look like I give a damn when he's asked like shaken or stirred, for the martini. Plus, bonus points. Mad Mickelson scratches his balls, as he says, like everyone's gonna know you scratch my balls, like when he's like hitting him with the rope. Just incredible stuff. I watched all those on the plane to and from England because they were like on the thing, and I was like, I haven't seen these really since they all came out, and so just it was great. And I'd never seen Quantum of Solace, so it was fun. Not as bad as everyone says. It's pales in comparison to the other ones, but it's fine.
Yep.
Great pick though, man. I think that is an excellent choice.
Thank you.
Awesome. If we had to rank those three in terms of like effective use of this trope,
I'm putting Will's pick at number 1 as being the most effective just because of the expectations.
I would do the same. Yeah.
Sweet. Then I will vote for myself as well. Well, I actually really liked all it's hard to choose because I like both examples that you guys gave. I don't know. I think it was much more fun just listening to your examples than trying to choose like a winner in that. So I could abstain, but I liked both of yours too. So
I think Vertigo is I would put Vertigo as my 2, and then There Will Be Blood, just because I think with Vertigo it is a bit more enduring than There Will Be Blood. I think that There Will Be Blood has a lot of different kinds of tension that run through the film. So even if you're not anxious from like an action-packed kind of scene, you're anxious for a different reason.
Yeah.
Basically the whole movie. Whereas like I did feel like it was more of a shock with Vertigo. So I would put Vertigo as my 2, and There Will Be Blood as my 3.
Calibrated, that's what I would have as well, I think.
Yeah.
Cool.
I think it's a good pick. There Will Be Blood, but it's remarkably like reserved. Like if you watch, speaking of, I know like off mic, we were talking about North by Northwest. It's like also just had an anniversary, something like that, where that movie moves like just from scene to scene, like which is like a typical Hitchcock thriller, like it's just go go go, whereas like Vertigo is stop and go. So having that opening sequence, if you're in the movie theater thinking like, wow, the whole movie is going to be like this, like amazing, and then just it screeches to a halt. I think like that edges out There Will Be Blood a little bit for me, whereas like just again expectation wise, I know with a Paul Thomas Anderson movie, like that there's going to be sort of like a rhythm to it, where like really unexpected terrible things happen, but like usually at unexpected times, and it's a little bit hard to predict. Like I think there's a very memorable scene at a donut shop in Boogie Nights when you guys get around to watching that you're going to be like, holy fucking shit. So there you go. I've just set you up to be scared or nervous when you see a donut shop pop up at some point.
Amazing. Thank you, Chris.
Welcome. Suspense is where it's at.
All right. Should we draw our next card?
Let us do it. Let's see what our next film is going to be.
My premonition tells me that no. I'm getting.
do you see,
You know
Will?
what? Before I draw the card, in the spirit of the movie we just watched, each of you guys pick a category. You have to pick a movie. Just pick a category you think it's going to be.
Will you pull up our thing real quick? Hold on 1 second. Because
I'm not
totally
going to cheat. I'm just going to
both.
say director drill down is
Okay.
It's my
Director
gut.
drill down.
My gut feeling.
All right, hold on 1
That's
second.
what the ghosts are telling me.
I feel like it's good. I'm gonna do both. I'm gonna double down and say
If either of you correct, I will buy you a pizza. I will send you a pizza.
Oh, all right. I'm gonna go with was the book better? And I'm
you don't have to pick the movie. Oh, you're gonna.
I'm gonna do it. I'm doing
Oh.
it. Double or nothing, baby. Pride and Prejudice. May it's gonna happen. We're gonna have
All
to
right.
talk about this.
I'm down.
All right. Director
If the
drill
cards are
down.
down.
Was the book better? Do you want just for funsies to say what director drill down you think it'll be? May? I mean, you might as well take a shot, you know?
I think it'll be Wes Anderson.
Okay.
Nice.
Let's see what it is. It is another bullet time, believe it or not.
Oh,
back to back.
okay.
And let the record show, I did shuffle the cards. There's video proof. Just what popped up, and it is number 3 on our list, which is another Will choice. It is the finale of Wreck, or I don't know like how that's stylized. If it's record, is it Wreck? Is that how you say that?
Yep. So there's 2 different versions. So this is really a question. There's a couple options with this. And I say that because Rec is I think it's Spanish. I'm trying to remember if it was like what Hispanic film production it was, but it's a Spanish film that was remade as Quarantine for the English film, which is pretty much shot for shot a remake. It's one of those in that category of films where we were like, let's not change anything, let's just do it again. So we can do whichever one you would find easier to either get a copy of or perhaps would like to watch. They're fairly consistent. I feel like if you watch one version, you're going to get the same out of it that you would the other one. Rec actually has, I think it's like a trilogy. So whereas Quarantine, I think, made a sequel that was not anywhere. That's like they diverged after the original film. But I'm down for either. So
since you have the OG, my vote is for the OG, and that's the one that you're talked about way more. So
let's do it.
I would agree.
Nice.
It can't be harder to find than Two of a Kind.
That's a valid point.
The movie that you legally cannot rent on digital platforms. Yeah.
Duly noted.
Well,
I will
I'm
say
excited.
I guess I don't think there's any dogs that get hurt. I could be wrong. Don't quote me on it. I'm gonna have to look that one up too. But
Okay.
I hope I could be. If there's one, maybe one. But yeah, we'll see.
Now this is like found footage horror kind of, right? Like that's the roughly the genre we're looking at.
We're looking at found footage horror zombies. So, oh yes,
amazing. Yeah, I've heard lots of stuff. I'm very excited. And because today I was just talking about watching scary movies and cool weather, I'm going to like turn my thermostat way down and pretend like I'm in the fall. I'm gonna have like a pumpkin spice latte. No, not really, but
No, commit to it. You gotta commit.
Iced.
Yeah, I think this is our first horror movie, right? Like straight horror that we have so far
I
that we
think
Could
so.
be.
Yeah.
Could be.
Cool. All right. Thank you both for another excellent time. Looking forward to seeing Rec. Thank you, audience members, as always, for your support. Without you, we wouldn't be doing this. So continue to please share the podcast, like the podcast, comment. We like looking through comments on YouTube or Twitter. So chime in. Don't be shy. And until next week, we love you.
Bye, guys.
Bye.